So my parents died when I was 15, sort of within about 6 months of each other. And so everything became a bit of a challenge after that. You know, I lost interest in school for a couple of years. I felt like I couldn't be hurt anymore. And so the physical pain was sort of cool, was bring it on. Not to say it didn't hurt at times, but it was cool. To be honest, I've always thought about it. I've enjoyed it all the way along for 15 years. I loved it.
Our guest this week, Chris McDermott, the courageous inaugural leader of the Adelaide Crows. He was a SANFL superstar at Glenelg before he turned up in the AFL. And as a player, well, he was committed, he was fearless, and he clearly led by example. Off-field, Bone, as he's affectionately known, lost both his parents as a teenager, and life was bloody tough when he was young. But he, his brother and his sister looked after each other and were still able to flourish. Beyond footy, he has raised millions and millions of dollars for sick little kids. He's done it absolutely magnificently with his charity, Little Heroes. Chris McDermott is a superstar on and off the field, and I cannot wait for you to hear this chat. Now, this episode does talk about mental health, so if you have any concerns, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Rightio, let's go. Welcome along to the Soda Room, a place where we get to know the real stories behind some of the biggest names in the game.
It was like we had won the grand final.
I just got some new boots. It was something special for me.
Did you understand the significance of that moment?
Oh, yeah. Nothing compared.
That's what I thought I had to do as a leader.
You got the same undies on.
I've got exactly the same ones on.
Well, Chris McDermott, great to have you here, mate. How are you?
I'm good. You've spared no expense, so I'm honoured to be here.
Well, we're into the podcasting world. I'm not quite sure what we're doing, but I thought, I want to celebrate some of the great characters and personalities that have been involved in football here in South Australia. And, well, you were the first man that came to mind.
Yeah, jeez. It was a quick thought, was it? Didn't have long to think about it.
Well, Bone, you've got to think. You were the most perfect example, I think, of the crossover between the old SANFL, or SANFL as they call it now, and the modern world that we have.
Look, you're right. It was a great time to play, actually. I feel really lucky and blessed to have been part of that world. Sometimes you get into conversation and think, were we unlucky? Why weren't we born now and playing now where there are so many other benefits to the game? But I think I was really lucky to be a child of the 70s and watch 70s SANFL footy when it was at its greatest, to play in the 80s against some of the greats and of the benefit and the beauty to be able to play against Russell Ebert. I played with Malcolm Blight. I played against Rick Davies and all the greats from the 70s. And then to merge into the 90s and be able to play some AFL footy right at the end, you're pretty lucky when you think about it.
Well, you don't want to be a young bloke now, because why do you want 700,000-800,000 a year to play footy?
Wouldn't play for that much.
Now, before we do that, I want to ask you, because you look fantastic.
I beg your pardon?
You do. You look fantastic. What do you weigh now, and what did you play at? Because you look really slim. You haven't blown out like we've seen with a lot of blokes.
No, well, let's hold that thought. So I played at about 85 kilos for the majority of the career. Not what I started at. So I probably started at about 77 kilos, 75, 77 when I was a 17-year-old and fairly lean. Played majority of the footy at about 85 kilos. Yeah. Finished and had a couple of years spell and probably blew to 90, early 90s. And now I'm back down to 75 kilos. Now, that's not through hard work. That was through, I got a little unhealthy and was cooked for a while, so lost a heap of weight and just haven't been able to put it back on. So I'm a diabetic now, and so that sort of challenges what you eat, and you got to be sort of careful with what goes in your mouth. So putting on weight's been a real issue for me.
Now, at 75 kilos, you were doing something magnificent. So this November coming up, you're running the New York Marathon.
Yes, and you're largely responsible for that, because I've seen you run it more than one occasion, and Stephen Rowe's run it 5 times. So a lot of friends, and through Little Heroes Foundation, the charity that I'm aligned to, we've sent hundreds of people over to run the marathon as fundraisers for us. And 42 Ks is a distance that I was never remotely interested in running. I don't like running. Never liked it at all. The most I've ever run is 10 Ks at once, and that was a long, long way.
Surely some of those pre-season camps, though, you must have been stuck in the bush having to run 15 Ks or something.
Never. No, I would walk if I had the opportunity. And the game, you won't remember. You might not have been born in the early 80s, but it was predominantly football was a walking game. There was a little bit of a burst into a 3/4 pace and a little bit at full speed, but a lot of it was stationary. It was walking around the centre square. You go back and look at the footage, and there's not a lot of the up and down running like there is in the game today. So we were very conservative with our energy. I didn't run a lot. And
you're selling it a bit
Ks.
short, though, saying that it was a walking game. Right.
Well, no, it was the energy was more spent in the physical nature. So it was a very physical game. It wasn't an aerobic game like it is today. I think the aerobics has taken over and it's nowhere near as physical. And that's not to say that the physical clashes aren't greater because it's done at a higher velocity.
Yeah.
So like a car crash, really, you do it at 30 Ks, it sort of dents you. You do it at 60 Ks and there's major damage. So I don't think anybody would say the game is soft now, but it's just a lot different. There aren't the packs of 6 or 8. There's not the wrestling and there's not the fighting. There's not the breaking of the rules. So the game is completely different, but there wasn't a lot of running. And just running 42 Ks has no interest with me at all until I tried to get my kids to get into the gym and start exercising. And I started running, and one of my feet has only got 3 toes on it now, not 5 toes on it. So running was a bit of it. So there was this little bit of a challenge about how to run. And I thought, oh, that's okay. I can do this. I ran 1K, I swear, as I sit here in front of you, I ran 1K the first time as far as I could go. I was exhausted.
Really?
Yeah. Now I'm 57, so 58, sorry.
Now, you said 3 toes you've had lobbed off. So tell us about what happened with the diabetes, and obviously now you're going to run, but what happened in the last couple of years?
Yeah, well, you want to know the story, really? Because
I'm fascinated by it, though.
Well, it's quite a simple story that had a bit of a poor outcome. So I was going to bed on a Wednesday night and I thought I'd cut my toenails for something, as you do on a Wednesday night.
Getting a bit long?
Yeah, getting a bit long, yeah.
Okay.
So just had a glimpse and I thought, you need a bit of a snip. So I was cutting and I cut the end of my toe. It was dark and, anyway, I was sort of doing it a little recklessly. I nipped the end of my middle toe and didn't worry anything about it. Didn't hurt. And I went to bed. Woke up the next day and I wasn't feeling all that well the next day. And so I stayed home, got dressed, didn't sort of look or worry about anything, went through the day and felt worse and worse as the day went on. Got to Friday morning, woke up and just felt really ordinary. So I went to the doctor and he does a blood sugar on me I think they just do it out of just habit.
Could I just ask at this stage, how long had you had diabetes for?
20 years.
Right.
So
okay.
I've got it relatively under control. Like life's pretty good. I'm in a routine and life's easy. I mean, I hate being high management, but you are when you're diabetic. You've just got to watch what you eat and you can't have this and you can't have that. But life was pretty
essentially
easy.
Post footy when you got
long post footy. So this is, I'm talking, it was late November, early December 2019.
No, I mean in terms of the diabetes. You had the diabetes post footy.
Post footy, yeah. So about 3 years after footy finished.
Right.
Anyway, so I went to the doctor. My blood sugar's 40. It's meant to be 6. Right. So he said, and he's looking at me, got no idea what's going on. And I've forgotten about cutting my toes. Just because, just moved on from that.
Of course.
Couldn't work out. So he said, you're going to hospital straight away. Shipped me into hospital. Yeah. And the doctor and the orderlies have come out, seen me, and they can't work out what's going on. Got no idea. And he said, you better take all your gear off. We're going to do a full body because we can't work out what's going on. I was sitting on the bench and took my shoes off, and my middle toe is black, like not brown, not light brown, charcoal black.
Right. And you had not noticed this the last couple of days?
Not.
I mean,
some will say, no idea. Had no idea. Right. There was no pain. There was no discomfort. Yeah. I'm feeling woozy, so I'm not feeling the best. But and we've all just collectively sworn, and he's looked at me and said, "Oh," and started ringing, hitting the buzzer, blowing the horn. Yeah. Just sent me straight up to intensive care, locked me in, and he said, "We just need to work out what's going on here." Could see that I said, what's going on? I said, well, I've cut my toenails and cut the end of my toe. And I should know to have done something about it. So all you got to do is put a bit of betadine on it and just clean it up, make sure it's okay, doesn't get infected.
That would have been it.
But it got infected. Ultimately, he said, you're a 1 in 100 chance. You just wrong time, wrong place, and it's really bad luck. But So he put me into hospital in intensive care that night. By the next morning, 6 o'clock, the toe next to it's black. So I've got not just one, but two, and halfway up my foot's black going towards my ankle. So you can almost see it going up your leg.
And what are you thinking at this point? You think it's like some sort of...
No, I my brain's clicking into gear and say, I know what I've done.
Right.
Now I'm worried about losing my foot.
Jesus.
So I know the toe are in all sorts of drive. And he said, we need to operate on this straight away before it's too late. So operated on. So they've peeled all the skin off my foot right up to my ankle as they operated on, cut my two toes off and left it open for a month. So I had to lie in hospital.
Hang on. Peel the skin back.
Yeah.
So see...
From where your leg ends and your foot starts, so right up to your ankle there.
Yes.
Pretty well the width of my foot right down to the toes, just open.
Like a strip of skin pulled back.
Yeah. So you can see inside.
What? So you move your toes and watch everything move?
Well, I could move three of them.
Wow.
So, and I'm in it, and because the ladies they're coming in bathing it every day. So after 2 days, they had to go in and operate again.
Yeah.
And clean it, and they had to leave the wound open. So they had to leave the top open, and also where they cut the two toes off, that's open. So I've got a gap down there because they're going in and poking a clean or like a swabbing that in there every day to clean it out and make sure no bugs are getting in there, pouring stuff on it, loading me full of drugs. And for a month, I just sat there and hoped that it didn't start going up my leg. And he said, we just got to sit and wait.
So you're sitting there for a month. You can obviously see this. I imagine you can't really feel it, can you? Because
no, it was painless.
And what's going through your mind? Is it your mind changing continuously throughout that?
Not really. It's one of those things, well, you idiot. You should have known, and you did know, and you just had a brain fade. So in the end, what will be, will be. I don't think there's any point. I must admit, I had 12 hours probably, the first 12 hours when I was in there, feeling pretty ordinary and not being overly impressed with life. Then you get over it and you just soldier on. You know, I think, so I was in there pretty well the 1st of December, let's say, and, you know, so 25th of December comes, it's Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're in hospital and I had the knock on the door at about 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Who walks in?
I think I know who this is. It's the great Graham Corns, isn't it?
Graham Corns walks in.
I remember him saying.
Yeah, just thought he'd come in and see me on Christmas Day.
Good on him.
Which was fantastic. And we've had a very interesting relationship since 1980 when we first met. And this is, 2019, nearly 2020, so 40 years later.
Yeah.
He sat there so great for him to come in and we just chewed the fat and talked and had a laugh. Until it got about 1:30. My wife, I know my wife's coming in, bringing in the kids.
Yep.
And his wife is ringing, trying to find out where he is because he isn't home. And there's 10 people coming over the Corns residence.
Yeah.
And he's ringing Chad, who's bathing in the lakes up at Renmark. He's in the river up at Renmark and he's in the water. He's meant to be at their place at 2:00 for lunch. And so Chad's up there. Then he rings Kane and speaks to him. And he's just, I had to ask him to leave. And I said, Graham, can you go? It's, it's 2:00. But he was magnificent. And I was a bit anti having people coming in. I didn't really want them to see me like I was, but it was a really good pep up and was great. And, I got to go home not long after that. And then it was probably 4 months of to fro, then a skin graft to put back over the foot.
Yep.
And you see the foot now and the scab. So it's 2.5 years later. The scab from where they took the toes off only fell off last week. So 2.5 years before that, I swear, only just fallen off last week. Whilst I was in the shower because I looked at it and my eyes don't work that well these days. Oh, that's what it looks like.
Wow.
So pretty cruisy.
Do you have any pain there at all?
No,
nothing.
It doesn't. No. And I think you have the phantom toe syndrome occasionally where you think they're there and
you can feel something.
Yeah, well, you sort of you bend your toes inside your shoe and think, I like it. Oh no, I don't have anything there. It's quite a weird feeling. I never thought I'd be able to run again because it was really hard getting on your toes, and I guess you've got to sort of push off.
Yep.
But you sort of, so that was the idea of going back to run. I just wanted to be able to run for my kids' sake and for family's sake and taking the dog for a walk. I just want to be able to do all those things. 1K, all of a sudden I got to 4Ks, then 5. Now I'm at 15, and the thought of running a marathon became almost like, this is going to be cool. I'm going to be able to do this, and that's something before I'm 60 that I'd like to do.
It's your next progression, obviously. From that is fantastic. So this is quite a significant marathon for you in November, given that you're running without the toes.
It's huge. Well, I'm running more than 10Ks. I'm running 10 and a half Ks plus. It's just one of those things that sometimes I think your brain needs to, I need to do this for, a bit selfishly, but for me, for some reason. So, Anna Liptak, so Maddie Liptak's sister is taking a big group from Australia over there. So she's taking us and looking after a group of 12 or 15 that we've got going. I know you're sneaking along there with your little kit bag. So I know you'll be at the front and I'll be at the back.
But I want to be running alongside you. I'm actually very, very excited because
get there early.
it's such a significant thing. So did losing the toes, did it change you in any way, or no, you just sort of took it within your stride, pardon the pun?
No, I think it changed me. Yeah. Well,
in what way?
No, it did. Made me feel really mortal. It made me feel, which is sort of fun. I think when you play footy, and certainly I found you like to believe that you're immortal and nothing hurt. I always tried to think nothing can hurt me. Nothing matters. You can overcome anything.
Yep.
Until this, and this was challenged that thought.
Yeah.
And I guess I need to challenge it back, if that sort of makes sense.
Yes.
So I feel like it's something I almost have to do.
Yeah.
And footy for me was a bit of that same challenge, that every week was a mental, physical challenge. And we'll probably go back to why that was. I mean, I'll jump in now and tell you what. So my parents died when I was 15, sort of within about 6 months of each other. And so everything became a bit of a challenge after that. I'd lost interest in school for a couple of years. I got 93% for maths in a maths exam in the end of year 10. And so I wasn't the dumbest kid in class and I wasn't the smartest, but I was going okay, but couldn't pass matric. 2 years later, I couldn't pass. So it's all been a bit of...
Can I just ask on that? So you did lose mum and dad. They were both ill within something like 18 months of each other.
about 12
so
probably in the end.
You're 16 at the stage?
15.
15. You got your brother and your sister.
Yep.
And you stayed in your house. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is 1980. So 79 into 80. We were blessed, and say, well, that's a bit of a weird thing to say, but my mum had breast cancer and had it for probably 4 years in a really primitive time for that illness and brutal time. The radiation therapy and chemotherapy was around, but it wasn't like it is today. So there were challenges, and we used to have to go to hospital with her when she'd have that sort of treatment because Dad was working, and so she'd drive herself, go and get the chemo, get in the car and drive back home again. And you sort of think of it now, and it was a bit weird, but in the end you do what you do, and it was life for us, so it was pretty cool. And my mum was a tough old thing. She was she was a Port Adelaide girl.
Port, wasn't she?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So her dad is a Hall of Famer at Port Adelaide, Les Damon.
Yep.
Best and fairest premiership player.
Yep.
So she grew up tough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
was she
family.
A tough mum on you?
Oh yeah, both sides. Super tough and super nice. So there wasn't anything she wouldn't do.
Yeah.
But gave the English language a challenge every now and then. So just great, really good fun. Dad, on the other hand, was a Catholic taxi driver, so didn't swear, loved his footy, but didn't swear. So chalk and cheese.
How do they get together then if they're so completely different?
It's one of the great wonders of the world. That one of the great wonders. Oh, absolutely. But it sort of worked. But Mum was crook, fought the fight, and then died in early 40s in 79. Dad came back. Oh, Dad was fine, and he said to us one night. I remember him sitting the three of us down one night, and he said, how your mum was crook. We never really told you and explained to you what was going on. Yeah. If that ever happened to me, would you like me to tell you? So that you know.
Yeah.
Said, yeah, of course we would. He said, well, I have too.
No, he knew.
Yeah. So and he went really quickly. I almost gave up in that sort of sense. But to answer your question, we had some great support. So Brian Rundle, who's Tom Rundle, South Australian, iconic name, was attached to soccer and cricket fans would remember the name really well. was involved with Golden Circle and supermarkets. So he just got us this load of food and kept on dropping it off at our house. And we had great support from people around who just helped us get through.
Yeah.
And then you sort of find a way to manage your way through.
Well, you say find a way to manage your way through sort of in a way that it seems I can't understand that because my parents are still with me.
Yeah.
So to understand as a 16-year-old boy and you got your brother and your sister, so Jane and Mark.
Yep.
And so they were older? Or
Brother's
you're in
older,
between?
year and a half older, sister's a year and a half younger. So,
But who cooked? Who did the cleaning and all?
Oh, my sister was a diamond. She was 14. She left school straight away. Left school at 14 and a half.
Gee.
Got special compensation to become a hairdresser.
Right.
So had a hairdressing salon at Seacliff. Yeah. And so she went there. Brother was a police cadet, so he was in the police force. And that's
was
when
he
they
in
had
the academy?
Yeah, he was at the academy. That's when they used to do 2 years at the academy. So now I think it's 6 months, but it was 2 years, and we'd come home on weekends. So it was somehow it worked. My sister took over running of the house and cooking and doing all that sort of stuff. And my brother went off and worked, and I sort of goofed around and played footy and did bugger all, if that's allowable.
It's so hard to comprehend that because for you, that's what you did. So you knew it. But I'm trying to think of, my age when I was 16, 15, going through all that, I don't know whether I'd be able to do it. But you just did it. You found ways.
You just did it. So, and again, we all had our support networks, if that's what you call it now, but around. Yeah. So my sister had her hairdresser. They became really good friends and great friends, and they had a family, so they really looked after her. My brother was a bit older and had a girlfriend, and had the police force. And, of course, the Kernahan family were massive for me. And so I had a really close relationship with them, obviously, and through Stephen and Gary and David and Annette and Harry were fantastic. But, it was a misconception for a while that I went and lived with them, which I didn't. Yeah. So the three of us just stayed together and snuck our way through. And you know what? In the end, there are plenty worse off than we were and we have been. So, it was never – it's not about sympathy or empathy or feeling sorry for yourself. You just get on with life and do what you do, and, you get your hard knocks and you move on. And in the end, it's all a pretty good lesson and part of growth.
I think most people, when they talk about you as a footballer, the two things that come to mind always to me are leadership and courage. Did that courage come from that upbringing? Do you reckon?
Without doubt. I like getting hurt, if that makes sense.
Physically?
Yep.
When you were playing?
Yep.
Would you put yourself in a position to…
Absolutely.
Really?
And if you think I could justify it because of what happened. Well, that's cool. I can't hurt. I felt like I couldn't be hurt anymore. And so the physical pain was sort of cool, was bring it on. Not to say it didn't hurt at times, but it was cool. I to be honest, I've always thought about it. I've enjoyed it all the way along for 15 years. I loved it.
Is that
and it was good. And it was just, it gave me a memory and it gave me a reason.
Yeah.
But it was my justification of playing that way. But I wouldn't have said it to anybody. So you have a routine.
Yep.
My routine was to go in there and just have my 2 minutes in there where you lock yourself away and just get yourself into that area and that zone that you needed to be in. And that was my space and that was my work. And then as soon as I was out of it, I was completely different. So I wasn't that what you saw on the field, off the field.
Yeah.
I love going out. I love my mate. Love my mates at that stage, and it was completely different. But just for those, I love those 2.5 hours. Loved them.
That's fascinating. So that was your way, I suppose, almost a legacy of your parents and what you went through.
Yeah, I blame them both completely.
But it was like your battlefield.
Yeah. It was like going to confession. It was just my place where I could get the anger and
but all the emotion,
all that
everything.
emotion that you carry with you, all that baggage that you carry with it.
Yep.
Some of it was good, some of it was bad, but it just got rid of it all. And I almost felt like once I walked off the field, had my shower, got dressed, I start the fresh week again.
Really?
And then you go away and then you build up all that stuff and you get rid of it and then you start again. So I love the routine, the process, and the ability to get all that stuff out of your system on a weekend.
Mate,
I feel sorry for blokes in these days because I don't know if they can get. Maybe they find it another way. I'd be interested to speak to them. You know, I don't have a great relationship with footballers in today's industry to see if they play the same way or if any of them do.
Yep. So essentially it was cathartic for you to go out and play every week.
That's the word. My language is English. My use of the English language doesn't expand that far, but it was cathartic. Very good.
But that is fascinating, Bone, really, to even understand that. And you could think, because like you're saying, with everything that happened, all the adversity at that young age, that you found a way to deal with things. And I suppose, did they sit you down with like psychologists and family therapy? No. This was your way. This is how you dealt with it.
I think in those days, therapy for us was either church or friends.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think any of us have been to church since.
Yep.
And so we grew up Catholic and we went to church every Sunday. We did Sunday school and Dad ran the house. That was his part of what Mum wouldn't said, okay, well, that's your bit. You do that and you take the kids. She never went. She never went once. So Dad and the 3 kids went. Mum never went.
Yeah.
It wasn't her thing. Yes, you may well laugh.
Yeah.
But that was his until 16 and I don't think either of us have stepped back into it.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's funny. Life is funny and you go on different courses and that was mine.
Well, I was going to ask you, I was thinking like, how does someone who obviously played such a great high level of football and so consistently for so long, how did you prepare yourself? But you've answered in all that in the way you went about it.
I did the same thing until I stopped playing. So
that same mindset
I was
all the way through.
I can remember going back to Glenelg in 1996 and playing 3 games under Simo.
Yes.
Playing a couple of games under Robert Shaw at the Crows. I just did the same. It was just routine, pre-match routine. It's like some blokes have to go to the toilet and have a wee before the game.
Yep, that was how you got in your zone.
My space.
Wow, that is fascinating. Let's go back to the footy too, because obviously, so at 17, you've made your debut not long after Mum and Dad have gone. And so that's how you prepared yourself for that. Did you ever feel intimidated on the field as a kid like that? Because it was pretty rough back then.
No.
You just straight out there and just head over the ball, looking for pain.
Well, and I never played like that as a kid. So I didn't play that way until my first ever, this is a true story, first ever Glenelg trial game under John Halbert. We played at Wirrana and it was the first quarter and I just dived on the ball. Like, I don't know why. I'd never done it before. I just did it. And I came off at quarter time and he said in front of the group, he said, young fella, because he didn't even know my name, he said, that's all you have to do. You do that and you'll play for me every day, quote, unquote. And
you did it and you did.
And I just kept on doing it. It's like one of those things, you know, be careful how strongly you take somebody's words because they could be really good for you. And ultimately, it probably ended my career as well, but it allowed me to survive for 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, at the end, my last year at the Crows was John Reid saying, don't go to ground, don't do that, stay on your feet or else you won't play.
Yeah.
So I didn't play because I knew
John Halbert.
I knew no other way. And John's words rung in my ears just do that. And we've laughed about it and spoken about it since. And it was just, it was his way and my way, and it remained my way, and it seemed to work. And the more I did it, the more he encouraged it.
Yep.
He never dropped me. You know, I had an okay year in 81, thanks to Jack, and I played okay. I had a horrible year in 82, a terrible year in 82. Second year blues, call it what you were like. But, you know, I just turned 18, so there were obviously some other interests that started to come in, and I didn't have a great control over myself at that stage, or a sense of willpower. So I obviously played hard off, tried to play hard on, but suffered a little bit. He never once dropped me. He never once, and he had plenty of times to do it.
Yep.
Graham Campbell came in 83 and he dropped me and pretty quickly. But, you know, Jack supported me, encouraged me and said, that's the way to play. That's the way to keep doing that. You'll be fine. And
well, that's your blueprint. That's what we know you as. You put your head in the hole every single time. You're talking about those early years. Now, the Magnificent Seven, that was you and a group of your Glenelg cronies, Steve Kernahan, Tony McGuinness, Chris Tooth. There's a whole bunch of you. Were you guys pretty loose? Were you hard to control off the field?
Peter Maynard, Tony Simons, Gavin Walsh, just to put all seven in there
seven?
because otherwise they will ring. You didn't mention me. We were the part. It's not just about you. Oh, dear.
How loose? Because the Bay Disco was thriving at that time, wasn't it?
Because we were all there every Sunday night until 1. And then we'd have the Monday off work because none of us were fit enough to go to work. And then our day would pretty well start Monday night at training.
Right.
Yeah, just great. I mean, you wouldn't change them for the world. You wouldn't do them now. But the beauty of living in that era, and I've spoken about being able to play in that era of the 80s when that comradeship bonding was done in a different way than it is done now, and in a way that now is considered inappropriate, unprofessional, and yes, by today's standards, but you can only live by the standards that you experience. I can only live by the standards of the 80s.
Yep.
I couldn't live the way that in 2020 as they did in the 80s. Just life wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And as much as Graham Corns used to fight against us doing it, he couldn't stop it. It was unstoppable. Like in 1994, his last year. So he started with me in 85.
Yep.
He's left in 1994, and we're behaving exactly the same way. Exactly the
9
same
years
way.
on.
Not a thing had changed. Not a thing had changed. Much to his disgust, disappointment, but a concession in the end that, okay, I'll just deal with it.
Everyone knows Cornsey's a teetotaler. So he comes back to Glenelg in 85 from being at South Adelaide. And you played with Cornsey obviously in your first years.
81, 82. And he was fantastic to me. Fantastic.
So when he comes back in 85 as the coach, and you obviously have those flags in 85, 86, how did he deal with it? Because he comes back into the club, you guys all, your Magnificent Seven and so forth, the senior players then playing some wonderful footy, but you were still going pretty hard at it. Now, was it Sharon Steffens that ran the Bay Disco? Is this right?
You're telling the story.
Did she call Graham Corns at one stage when he'd taken over the role as a coach and said, you need to come down, Graham, I can't control your players?
Yes.
What happened when Cornsey rocked up? What time was this? Midnight or something on a Sunday night?
I'm guessing now because, obviously things were a little hazy. Yes, and when your players, there was one that was identified as not the leader of the pack, but the bigger of the problems.
Right, and would his name be Christopher McDermott?
Yes. Now, I don't necessarily agree with Sharon's perception of my status at that stage, but let's go with it and say she was right and I was completely wrong. So he walked into the Bay Disco at, let's say, midnight on a Sunday night into Monday morning, and probably not the ideal time to come and ask me to come outside, and isn't it time I went home and got a good night's sleep?
Right.
Yes. And so as he took me out, as we walked outside together, there was a player or two that came outside and suggested strongly to me that if I needed some help, just to nod and they would come to my assistance very quickly.
Would that player have played some good footy for the Sydney Swans?
See that bus that has just driven past, no one's going underneath it. So here's out of respect to all parties.
Yes. So how did Cornsey deal with it? How did Cornsey deal with it when he's taking you out into the car park? He said, what, time to get home, get the boys home?
I said, no, I'm going back inside. You better go. You can go home.
And he did?
Yes.
Training Monday night?
Yes.
What happened?
I just got flogged, but that's cool. That was life. And what look, to Graham's credit, he dealt with it the way he needed to deal with it. And he didn't like it, and he tried to discipline it. He tried to stop it. He tried to penalise it. So, and that was cool. And I think our way of answering it was, don't worry, we don't miss training. So we will be there. We'll do everything. We never asked for a night off. We never didn't turn up. We never missed out on anything. Throw it at us. We'll take it. We'll produce. And so that was our way of justifying what we did. Yeah. So when it affects us out there, come and see us. And I don't think it did. Now, could you have been better? Probably. But 85 and 86, you were as good as you had to be.
You won the flags, best and fairest in 86.
So, yes.
Yeah, so it worked all right. And in all that time, obviously, and you had I had all that time with Graham at Adelaide.
Yep.
And obviously you were responsible, I suppose, in a big way of probably creating that culture to a degree as captain of Adelaide. So it was still a pretty relaxed outside of footy time.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And again,
that was big for you, wasn't it, to continue
huge.
that?
Yeah. I really believed in it.
Yep.
I loved, again, so people, how? Why?
Yeah.
I was an Ian Chappell. I adored Ian Chappell as a kid. I adored the way he played the game, the way he carried himself, and the way he conducted himself off field. I mean, I waited I went to every Sheffield Shield game, waited for him to sign I've got every Ian Chappell book that's ever been written. He signed it once where the pen didn't work, and so I've traced around it, and my hand was shaking. Oh, it's the worst eye in Ian you've ever seen in your life, so it makes it look like forgery. But I adored the way he played and just wanted to replicate him as a captain if I could. And I think he would probably admit he stretched the rules, broke them, had that conflict with the upper echelon all the time, fought with the hierarchy, but bonded his team and had, the 72 Ashes team, and he just a great era, World Series where he had to reinvent and go to World Series cricket again. I just loved the way he did. So I just wanted to be him. Yeah. And so I tried to carry what his persona into the footy world and try and replicate it if I could. And I guess that's some justification for the way I behave. But not only did I do it at Glenelg, but when the Crows started, I got to redo it all over again with a new set of players. So I just thought, this is great. So here's 85, there's 91. And just did exactly the same.
And Cornsey would have known what was coming because he'd seen it. He'd lived it all before.
Here comes the train. I just better get off the tracks. So, and look, I found it at the start of the Crows, and I don't expect everybody to understand it, and certainly not the world now to understand it, to like it, but this is the way I saw it. I thought it was a really important part of bonding, of culture, of the players understanding that you're human, that you're not just this hard-ass 31, 32-year-old, because I'm a generation older than a lot of them, that just, you know what, so yesterday, I needed them to understand that I could get on with them okay. I loved the greatest part for me about Adelaide, notwithstanding the ability to be able to play with Tony for a few more years, with Jarman, with Scotty Lee, Rodney. I love Rodney Maynard and that group. But I got to play with Sean Wren as a youngster, Benny Hart as a 17-year-old in his Blackfriars school uniform and tie, and, Mark Rasciuto, to be able to have something to do with Mark Bickley, a bit of Simon Goodnight. I saw Tyson Edwards, Andrew McLeod as a 17-year-old walking that wouldn't speak, and to see how he's evolved and developed. Like, how lucky are you? How lucky are you to mislead those blokes for a couple of years?
You created a huge part of that foundation. I want to ask a little bit about that, because that obviously foundation then really progressed magnificently with those flags. But when you're a kid in 81, Fitzroy come knocking. I think Carlton chased you for a while. You got drafted to Brisbane at 86 after that grand final. You never went any of those three occasions. Were you ever really tempted? Did you want to test yourself at that?
No.
What was next? Not once.
No, I was never really tempted to go.
Right.
Did I want to? State of Origin footy was huge. I'm so lucky. Got to play State of Origin from sort of 85 through to 94, I think. So for 10 years, felt that was testing. And I didn't have the passion. I watched Kerners grow up. I remember Kevin Sheedy being on his door as a 15-year-old, knocking on his door, parking his car out the front, and just Adam Essendon were at him. Then Shane O'Sullivan from Carlton came and was at him and got to know Shane really well. But I didn't have it. I liked watching it on TV. I was a Woodville barracker in my early days in SA. So I loved Malcolm Blight. I just loved watching Blight play. So there was an affection for North Melbourne, but didn't really do it. Nothing. It didn't. I loved Glenelg so much that nothing compared. And to play footy at a place that didn't compare was less than where you were playing. So effectively going to play for money just didn't work for me. Didn't add up.
How hard did they chase some of those clubs?
Fitzroy, not much. They got to learn pretty quickly that, no thanks.
But you're 17 at that point.
And getting on the reckless stage. Shane O'Sullivan was at Carlton. So when they were struggling to kick Kerners, come on, why don't you come over and play as well? I said, Shane, you've been a good bloke. And Shane was a good bloke. Shane went to Brisbane and came back again. And it was the first time of Brisbane, and Mark Mickham was going, and a few SA, Martin Leslie, I think, was going at that
Choco
stage.
went up there from Collingwood.
So there was a little bit,
Yeah.
Got to meet Peter Knights, who was coaching, Paul Cronin, who
Yeah.
was the chairman. So I got Dave Sullivan in my lounge room.
That's it.
One of the great highlights of my life.
Dave Sullivan, the cop from Matlock
Dave Sullivan
Police.
from the Sullivans, the cop
Yeah.
from Matlock
Yeah.
Police. Like it didn't get any better. There was just something missing.
Yeah.
And again, they weren't overly organised, so there was that other bit of doubt. It wasn't Glenelg.
Yeah.
It wasn't Glenelg. I just wanted to play at Glenelg.
Yep.
And there was no real talk of South Australia at that stage. This is, 86 and 87. There was nothing happening. So I was resigned to playing, well, not resigned, but more than happy to play out my life at Glenelg. More than happy. Would have walked away as happy as anybody could have walked away.
Yeah. He sounds very much like Gary McIntosh, doesn't it, with his love for
and
Norwood.
Mac has even takes that to the next level because, he had a chance to have that South Australian affiliation and chose not to. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Got blessed to play with Macca. Got, in a couple of state games, got to look for his tooth in the middle of Footy Park one night after Greg Williams knocked it out in the second term. Just nice whack. And Mac was looking around in the square as we were meant to be walking off it after. I said, what? And said a couple of words about his tooth not being there and some bloke knocking it out. And so we're walking around the centre square looking for his tooth.
Did you find it?
He found it.
He did.
And whacked it back in. And
did Greg
life moved
Williams have to pay the price for that later in the second half?
I think there was an attempt, but Diesel was pretty good. Yeah, don't worry. And you'd want to be pretty good because Diesel could handle himself all right.
Absolutely.
So, that wasn't the fight I was going to pick, Soda. I was going to annoy that one. Mackie, you're on your own now. You got your tooth. The rest is yours.
We're jumping around a little bit here, but I think then obviously when Adelaide comes in and you're the captain, I remember Graham Corns once, I think it was when you're inducted in the Hall of Fame last year, he said essentially there was no other choice for a captain despite having to pull you out of the Bay Disco, which was great.
He'd forgotten.
So you become captain of that club and then you go and start. So I'll take you back to that first night, Friday 22nd of March, playing Hawthorn, and you've got the boys about to run out onto the ground. Did you understand the significance of that moment as captain?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the 6 years are a bit of a blur, but that's probably my strongest memory is just stopping them at the end of the tunnel before we went out and just saying to them how significant this moment was, how huge this moment was, not just for us, but for the 45,000 that we could hear and have heard for the last hour outside screaming, roaring for this moment to happen. So I just thought it was really important to recognise that moment and the fact that in 20 years' time, they're going to be talking about this moment. And this moment will live in the memory of so many people for such a long time, and how honoured and blessed we were to be taking the first steps for this footy club and what would be a great footy club. It was just, I knew I was in such a lucky place, such a fortunate place, and I just wanted it to be that way for all of us that walked out on that ground. It was such a significant moment, not knowing what was about to unfold for the next 2 hours and how well we could possibly play. That was not in the picture. We wanted to go out and play well, but I think we all thought, gosh, it's Hawthorn.
Absolutely. I mean, they were the powerhouse and you smashed them to pieces. Was it that? I think that says something about mindset because obviously South Australia has always copped a lot of flack from Victorians. You go on and take the Victorian powerhouse and essentially wipe the park with them.
It says everything about mindset. I think for all of those that are sceptical on mindset and just getting yourself in that moment, don't understand it because we were in a space. And you know what? I think it happened once after that when I was at the Crows in a year where we played, ironically, Hawthorn again in the rain at Amy Stadium, and we kicked one goal to half time and we were just hopeless. And we got back in the room and we just knew we were going to win the game. It was this weird feeling that came over us and we were all the same. That week on the Tuesday night before the game, we'd done this arrow breaking in your neck where the point of the arrow, so a proper arrow would be placed into the soft part of your neck.
Right.
And a player would stand at the other end of the arrow, where the feathers come, hold it, and you had to walk towards him and bend the arrow until it snapped. Now, so you can just imagine. And these are proper arrows. This is not a blunt end.
With the steel end.
With the steel end in there.
Whose idea was this?
Robert Shaw's at that stage.
Right.
So it was, now, my memory's not working, but I'm sure it was short. And so walking into it, and
it
the
would
arrow
bow. It would
bows,
bow, yeah.
and then there's this moment where it's pressing into your neck, and you're thinking, this is going to go through there, and I'm in a bit of strife. And so that moment came where you step forward or step back, and you step forward, and it snapped, and it was one of the most empowering things you've ever done. That carried through to the weekend. We all did it. Every player did it. Billy Sanders did it. All the officials did it. It was incredible. Amazing.
And every time it broke, like if you could withstand it, and would it hurt? It was getting to the point where it was bloody killing.
It would get to that point with it.
You think
It's going to go through. I'm going to stand out and be like Elmer Fudd on the cartoons and have something poking out my neck. Honestly, if you get the chance to do it, because we've done fire walking as well, didn't go so good. Didn't go so good. And lots of people have done that. Yeah. That's the embarrassing stage, but incredible.
And that worked.
Do it. Get a chance.
Right?
Do it. It is fantastic. Now, I've probably spoiled it because you can do it, because we'd never seen it, heard it, knew what was going on. And prior to us all meeting in this room, we didn't know what we were going in for. Right. So it's almost like you've been dealt this card. Yeah. And now you got to do it.
Right.
So we're all looking around.
Surely some blokes must have been really apprehensive and nervous about it.
But you know what? After one and two do it, it gets easier and easier and easier. But anyway, some of the great things, you talk about a footy career where great memories, what are the greatest things? Some of the greatest things don't happen on the ground, happen off the ground.
It actually does show how powerful your mind is, isn't it? Because you're saying your 2 or 3 minutes where you go into the toilet before every game and get your mind right, or whether you're bending an arrow into your neck, whatever gets your mindset into the shape that it needs to be to perform, you can just about do anything.
Has the game got there yet? I think is the question when we watch. I don't think it has. I think, and even because Graham Corns started this, and he couldn't extend it. He didn't know where to take it, and we had different people come in and talk to us as a group, and him trying to do it on a regular basis, but there was no sense to it. There was no theory to it. There was no process to it. There was no outcome to it. Yep. We tried meditating, lying on the floor, doing all that stuff, and nah. Yep. I did that when I'm going to digress here and just go completely at a different tangent. So that meditating, I did it when my wife was pregnant with my twins. So this is 16 years ago. Yeah. And we're lying on the floor and close your eyes and breathe deeply, and you get in for your wife more, but you do it as a supporting husband. And I don't know if you've ever done that in this environment, but I found it easy to fall asleep.
Yes. And
I also found it easy to lose control of my bodily functions.
Yeah, right. When you were relaxing and meditating.
So, if I said the words to you, let Ralph out, you would know what that would mean, and most of the people listening would know. And so there is 20 people in this room. We're all meditating. She's talking very peacefully. And this is great, and just relax. And then my wife whacked me, woke me up, and it was the end of the session, and I left very quickly.
You think you were back in the change rooms at halftime of the 93 preliminary final?
I've learned that by the time you get to nearing 60 that it doesn't matter. Everything's an experience. Everybody's been to a similar place, and you just tell it like it happened and deal with the consequences.
One thing I noticed as we're all getting older, and I saw this for you when I went into your office the other day, and you had your glasses on and you were reading the computer screen, but you also had a big magnifying glass like Inspector Clouseau looking through the glasses to try and be able to read that.
Yes is the answer. $2.50 magnifying glass. So, yes.
But it's funny, I think with age, I also discover now, and I'm on the wrong side of 50, that all of
I'm
those
on the
things,
right side of 60.
Well, there you go. When you're trying to control yourself, the other thing I've noticed is there's no power in your stream left when you're going to the toilet. And like in the middle of the night, if you've got to go to the toilet, you're sort of standing over the toilet and you're just going, come on, I know I need to go. And then I'll start dribbling. I'm going, I just don't have, when you're younger, you could piss over the fence.
You can leave this bit in?
Why not? But you know what I mean? You start to realise and you go, I'm mortal. And you were talking about your feet earlier.
Yeah. I don't have that trouble when I go to the toilet though.
Have you got power still?
Oh.
Really?
I've got strength. It's gone everywhere else. I've got nothing else other than
Strengthen your stream.
strength in my stream.
You must have no prostate problems.
And we'll move back to football. But I don't even want to. I don't want to extend that conversation because there are other issues that I might be having drama with, and there's some ads on the TV at the moment that are talking about that. But
just on that, now you talked about letting Ralph go.
Yes.
I was chatting yesterday with some guys from footy, and I said I was going to come and have a chat with you with this podcast, and they said, "Can you ask Bone if that was really true that someone farted at halftime in that 93 grand final?"
Of course he did. End up going on to captain the team in 2
It was
premierships.
Bickley. It was without doubt.
By his own admission.
Right. Now, was it the noise or was it just the result that
All
really
of the
got
above.
everyone?
Everything you can imagine about
Right.
that sort of bodily function was distasteful.
Did that
Disgusting.
derail that game?
No.
Absolute crap, isn't it? The
Absolute.
myth of the...
Absolute myth.
Because I think-
Absolute myth. I mean, again, you have time to pull. None of us went onto the ground laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, crikey, you're 6 goals up. It's a prelim final.
Yes.
You're at a grand final
Yeah.
a week away.
Yeah.
No, we were very quick. There were mistakes made in that game by all that ultimately cost us. And again, we were playing against a very good Essendon team of that era. It was an opportunity lost, absolutely, and thanks for bringing it up and reminding
No, so
me.
we can categorically say the fart had nothing to do with losing that 93, the unlosable prelim.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good. Because a bloke was telling me yesterday, he goes, it's definitely the fart stopped them. It stopped them from winning the flag. Because you'd beaten Essendon in the elimination final, hadn't you? And you had to play them again in the prelim.
No, we'd beaten Hawthorn, then played
that's
Carlton.
right.
It was the odd.
You lost to Carlton.
You lost to Carlton at Waverley.
Yes, that's right.
And then went into a prelim final. I mean, it was just. It was the way the top 8 worked back in those days. It was just or 6 or 8, whatever it was.
That's right.
The way it worked back then. So lucky illusion, we're playing in a prelim final.
Yeah.
Great year, 93. Great year. No. I think it's a fun story. But speak to Graham.
Yeah.
Speak to any of the players. It was certainly forgotten by the end of the game. We had so many opportunities to win that game. You don't miss goals from in front. You don't let players lose. We just lost. You speak about your focus and your mindset, and we just lost it completely. Yeah. And they found theirs, and they had a couple of blokes who could play the game too. Don't forget.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, what Buick kicked 6 that day. Salmon kicked 4.
Yeah. And my bloke had 6'10". Long was playing, and Watson was there, and Fletcher was there. I mean, super team.
Yeah,
one that got away though. Definitely one that got away.
Tell us about 96 because, as you said a little bit earlier, you went back to Glenelg for a few games.
Yep.
I can remember you running around the mud there at Alberton Oval in that game, and then you got axed at the end of 96. 97, 98, they win the flags. At the end of 96, can you remember how you felt at that point?
Oh,
was it anger?
Yes, anger was the first word I was going to say. Anger, but I'm not quite sure why I was cross or angry. Because it happened to Jar, McGuinness, me, Weed. I reckon the 4 of us at the same time, and we're at Footy Park in the bar, just waiting to be called in. Went in one by one. One of us, I think Jar went in first.
Yep.
Lasted 10 minutes. I went in second. Was about 2 minutes. Fred went in third. Was about an hour and 2 minutes.
Right.
Weed went in last and was about 2 minutes. So it was really weird process, but it'd been set up, and once the first one went, we all knew what was going on. And again, angry because you're always angry if something happens against you. I think that you don't want. It's not your choice. I always wanted to leave the game by my own choice. That's the way it was. It was Malcolm wanted some clear air when he got there.
Yep.
Certainly understand it. Certainly didn't like it, but I guess with the beauty of hindsight and time, it is 25 years or 26 years by now, so I'm over it.
Yeah.
No, we were angry. Yeah, I think that's the most apt description. Yeah.
Did you think it was unfair? If you look at, because you obviously went and coached at North and North Adelaide.
I thought it was unfair.
Yeah.
But only because of the last 2 years. Yeah. So if you pulled out 96 and said, I'm picking 97 on what's happened in 96, I get it. So I understand it. I played a handful of games in 96. That was it. I like to think, I don't like to think, I sort of think I hold Robert Shaw to account for that, for the club that he led for 2 years and how I disagreed with so much that was going on.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that's me justifying the end.
The decision.
Yes, rather than accepting responsibility for it, if that makes sense. I find it a weird way to finish. I found it a disappointing way to finish because I still wanted to play. I still had that mindset. I wanted to play.
Yep.
I still thought I had something to offer. And I guess to get told you don't was a challenge.
What were you, 31 by then?
What's that, 96? I was 33. 30. I was about to turn 33. So I was old.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
I just thought I had something left.
Yep.
Maybe I'd fallen myself.
No.
Then you can't say you're within punching distance. But no,
I didn't. I know that you didn't spend 2 minutes in the toilet though before you came to sit in here, so I don't think you're in the zone right now.
Funny you should say that. I did before I left work. So I only had to walk down the street about 400 metres. So it was the last thing I did before. I didn't even realise that till you just said it then. Yeah. No, so it's really weird. I had the mindset I wanted to play. My body was in a reasonable condition. I'd trained really hard. Robbie Carruthers was at the Crows at that stage, and he took a personal interest in me and getting me to a level. And, I trained so hard. I did my groin, and so I had to get that repaired. So I missed a bit of footy, came back, thought I was really healthy and running okay. But, with the games I played, it played me off the bench, and it was the stage where you didn't rotate your bench. You just brought them on late. So I didn't get a lot of game time, went to and from. So I was still in the mind to play. Didn't feel like it was the end.
Yeah.
Maybe I was kidding myself.
Can you look back on it now, on all that time, without that sort of moment weighing heavy?
Doesn't weigh heavy.
Yeah.
Doesn't weigh heavy at all. Yes, I'm over it, but it's like a scratch. It's just an itch.
Yes.
Just an itch. And my wife has taught me you've got to be better than that. You've got to, and so I think, the Hall of Fame dinner at the footy club last year was, to choose your word, very cathartic, and was great to go back there. I love the opportunity to meet Matthew Nicks. I think he's a fantastic football person and great for that footy club. I love the way the club has evolved and, being in the media and being asked to commentate on and give your opinion on the footy club. I've always done that in the most honest way I can, and that hasn't pleased everybody. And the smile on your face says,
Well, you had some tough times though, didn't you, with that, because people at the club didn't like your assessment, but it was an honest assessment, wasn't it? It's exactly what you thought and watched.
Well, I told Channel 7 when I started, and certainly 5AA, that's just, I'll call it as I see it, and I didn't know that I couldn't lie that way. I mean, I just got to say it as you see it. And so that was the way it was going to please some, and it got worse over the years. It didn't get better. They didn't get more used to it. They got more anti it and just didn't like it. So, I mean, that was the hierarchy at the time, and that's fine. I've had some really good times, and Neil Craig was great after the 10th year. I got to go back there and toss the coin, and had a great relationship with Craigie for a while. I had a great relationship with Paddy Dangerfield for a while, and so had really good individual relationships with some, but in the end the club just didn't like it. And so I'm largely out of the media now. And
well, you're back calling some footy just recently in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Did you like it? Because it has been a little while since you were in the media.
It was fun and different too, because you do it from the studio now because of COVID and things have changed. To do it there, it was really good. Now, challenging because I don't watch a lot of footy either. For 30 years of my life, I watched footy every weekend, multiple times. For the last 3 years, I've probably seen 2 games.
Yep.
So it was different. And I must confess, I didn't know every player.
Yeah.
So, it's a challenge looking at the TV, looking at the budget, trying to see the stats and trying to get it all right and get it to come out of your mouth. So, but really interesting. And thankfully I've called more Port games than I have Crows games, done a couple of Crows, but it was good to step back in.
You talked about, just briefly, you got inducted in the Hall of Fame last year. You went back to the footy club, which you really enjoyed. And there were 2 things that you said that night that I remember well. The first one you said was, I don't feel like I've earned this right to be in that Hall of Fame. You hadn't done enough at that football club, which, I mean, you've always been humble, but I found that pretty remarkable given the role you played, captain for the first 4 years, and you had your 6 years there and was such an important part of that club.
Yeah, I understand that, and I certainly did knock it back.
Yeah.
But, for me, Hall of Fame, longevity, excellence, long period of time, some criteria, that's just my criteria for it. Love it, wouldn't give it back, and enjoyed the night, loved the night, thought it was fantastic. Really good loved it for my kids, for them to go and see.
You had Fraser and Harper there.
Yeah, my extended brother and sister and their families. It was so great for them. So it was the large reason to do it.
Yep.
No, and I stand by it. I still don't think I fit comfortably into that hall.
Well,
honour.
I can tell you that I think most people who watch football and know football would have to disagree with you, because I think you fit in there comfortably.
Yeah, well, as I said before, I don't have to be right all the time.
No,
it's
you
just
don't.
an opinion.
Now, one other thing that was said that night that I really stayed with me, your wife Jo was there, and I remember you were talking about her and the family and the kids, and you said one thing that your wife said, I don't think I would have really liked you when you were younger, when you were playing football. I'm glad I'm with you now. Did she actually say she said that to you before?
Oh, many times.
Really?
Many times. In fact, she's changed a little bit in recent times and said, maybe I don't like you these days either. No, she did. She has heard about the way I was, and she wasn't a great football watcher. And we didn't meet till I was 36 or 37, so it was a long time after playing, and I guess I'm a different person. I think when you play the game, you have to be selfish. You have to be it's a lot about you. There's a lot of me when you play, and it's just the way it is for a lot of people that play, no matter what sport it is. She wouldn't have liked the way I behaved on field, and she certainly wouldn't like the way I behaved off field. And I didn't. Again, I've sort of mentioned the off field a lot because that's true. I mean, that's truth. Off field was really important to me.
Yeah.
I don't think I did anything that was against the law, but I just pushed the envelope. Is that
nothing wrong with pushing the envelope, is there? That's what the boundaries are there for, to be pushed, aren't they?
And sometimes you put a foot over the boundary, and if you hold the ball inside the boundary, it's not out of bounds.
Correct. Your feet can be out as long as the ball's in.
Correct.
So sometimes you might have lived with your feet outside the boundary a little bit, but the ball's always been in.
Sorry, was that a question or a statement?
I'm asking.
That would be my recollection of those years.
Bone, look, we've run out of time, but I've got to say, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. You fit in the Hall of Fame, and not just the Crows one, you fit in the South Australian Football Hall of Fame. You should be in every Hall of Fame, because I think you've been such an incredible part of football in this state.
Do you know the Hall of Fame I want to be in?
What's that?
Is the Hall of Fame with the New York Marathon Hall of Fame on November the 6th, 2022.
Well, one thing I'll be looking forward to, because we will be staying in the same hotel there, is when we get the bus out to Staten Island to start it and we can't find you, I'll just have to say, just wait. Chris is in the toilet. He's got 2 minutes in there, and he's just preparing himself mentally, because he is going to go and tear this 42.195 kilometres apart.
It's the funniest thing you've said for an hour and a half.
Mate, thank you so much for joining us, Bone. Absolute pleasure, mate. Congratulations on everything. And one thing we didn't even really get time to touch on at all, but I think it is certainly worth noting, you talked about that you were selfish as a footballer, and you had to be. But outside of football, the fact that the things that you've done, not just for your family, but what you've done for Little Heroes, and it's 26 years now you're celebrating. I think you're up getting closer to $40 million that you've raised for kids, is unbelievable. So if you felt you were selfish when you were playing football, mate, you have given back 1,000,000 times in spades. So congratulations on that too.
I just want to say one thing. Thank you for having me in the soda room.
Good to see you, Bone. Well, guys, thanks so much for listening. Now, if you love what you just heard, please subscribe to the Soda Room podcast. You could write a review. You can watch the show on YouTube and share it with your buddies. And if you'd like to get in touch with the show, drop us a line, info@thesodaroom.com. Catch you soon.